End game, self-correction. So when you're doing something, once it falls out of line, you know, because this is not the way to do it. Right? Once you've been coached and know what to do, if in executing your behavior, the new behaviors, things fall out of line, you're able to correct yourself because you know what the requirement is. And thirdly, self-generation. Self-generation such that there is no dependence on the coach. There's a kind of independence of thought because you've learned how to carry the action or to fulfill the behavior or the expectation. So all of the nice things about helping people and supporting them, we're hoping, we're working towards helping and supporting that will lead to long-term excellent performance, helping and supporting that will lead to self-correction, so the coach doesn't have to be there, helping and supporting to ensure self-generation of that behavior and other behaviors that are relative to that. That's my end game in terms of coaching. Okay. So that can't happen. None of that can happen. And it sounds very nice that I'm saying it, and it's a nice workshop, and we feel good about these words. None of this can happen without leadership at a high level. Leadership at a high level, which means that we are engaged with the employees whose mindset and actions we're seeking to influence.
Sorry about it. No, sorry about it, guys. It's a training session, but I can't pick up elsewhere.
Don't worry. You're just doing what we do, so it's no problem. Don't worry. Yeah.
Could you pause? Could you put your phone on mute, somebody, please?
I wonder if it's me. I have it
Could
on
somebody
mute.
put your phone on mute? So we're getting Doreen, that's you? All right, Doreen, back with you. I'm taking my time with this because we're going to case study shortly, but I just want to set the context. So when we talk about, so go back a little bit because we lost a train there. All of this that I mentioned here, just the long-term excellent performance and self-correction, self-generation, requires leading at a high level. A very high level. It's beyond what the textbooks say about what is leadership and what is management. It's about employee engagement and connecting with the persons that you're seeking to influence. Thank you, Doreen, for keeping us present that we are in a workshop and we have to be present so we can get the full value of this. So there are certain behaviors that are involved. What behaviors are we seeking to influence? I'm asking. I won't take the time to ask, but what behaviors are we seeking to influence? What performance outcomes are we seeking to influence? What employee outputs are we seeking to change or to influence? What's the end game out of the process? Is it meant to be developmental? Is it meant to be punitive? So let me ask you the question now then. What behaviors are we, when we talk about coaching, what behaviors are we focused on? From your experience, look at behaviors. What behaviors are we thinking about? What behaviors have you had to be trying to influence in your work? I open the floor now for you to talk back to me. What behaviors are we seeking to influence when we talk about coaching? You mentioned earlier, for our colleagues mentioned providing support, providing guidance, helping people to, strengthen their performance and so forth. When we look at the individual, what behaviors are we focused on? Who can begin to tell me? Come guys, listening for you now. What behaviors? Come on, remember, so it's not a lecture where we're going to be using your own feedback, yes, to help you understand the concept a little better. What behaviors, when we say coaching, either to change behavior or to influence behavior or to impact behavior. What behaviors are we talking about? Give me an example of what we're talking about.
Taking initiative.
And so taking initiative. So you're right, fine. Behaviorally taking initiative. Thank you. Anybody else? Thank you very much.
What about expanding their capabilities, overcoming obstacles, achieving the desired outcome for what the conversations are supposed to achieve?
All right, so overcoming obstacles.
Growth and development, of course.
Growth, yeah, growth. And so there are some behaviors, that you are seeking to change towards behaviors that are functional, workable, valuable to the individual and to the organization. And those are the behaviors you described a while ago, correct? Or not so much, correct? What behaviors? So when you look at the individual, when I look at you, Cheryl, for example, what behavior that Cheryl has exhibited or has not yet exhibited that I'm seeking to bring out, if it's not yet exhibited, and if it has been exhibited, I am seeking to influence or to change or to, help her to handle better. What behaviors are we talking about? What you said earlier is correct. Any other behavior? Behaviors. I'm going to share the context in a while, but I want us to get a handle on behaviors. Anybody else? Thank you, ladies. Anybody else? What behaviors?
The importance of working in a team.
All right, so team working behaviors, yes, team working. That's so important. We find that many people speak about team player. When it comes to interviews, tell us about your strength. I'm a team player. Then I will go and say, what does that mean? Yes. So you might find people coming to the workspace who are not able to work with a team. They are a one-man show. They are a lone wolf, so to speak. And we want to influence that behavior in a positive way. Thank you very much, sir. Next, who else? What other behaviors? Very good feedback so far. What other behaviors? Talk to me, guys. Behaviors now.
Behaviors, negative and positive behaviors.
What do you call negative and positive behaviors?
Different behavior patterns. I mean, how someone acts in the workplace, because sometimes you want to work on changing or influence their behavior through coaching. All
right. So what behaviors though you want to influence in coaching? You're correct, the concept is correct, but what behavior are you thinking about? Give me an example of a behavior you're thinking about.
From the initial stage of what you're saying, some persons just basically come to work, eat lunch, just work, and they go home. Passive aggressive, right? So to change someone's behavior like that and turn it around, so we can actually meet the company's goal and objectives.
All right. So, all right. So, and that's where I need to help you, because so what are we looking for? What behaviors are we looking for? So is it that people are there, and if you go to the second one on performance management, is it that they are doing all what appear to be the right behaviors? They come on time, they work cooperatively, but they're not producing anything. Is there some behavior there that we're maybe not seeing or seeing the full extent of, and we need to influence? So as you mentioned, passive aggressive behaviors where people will say one thing, but you will not see it come out in their action in terms of what is expected of them. So when we say positive behavior and negative behavior, we need to know what behavior we're trying to influence. Go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead, Althea.
Okay, so I stepped away for a little while, but let me try. So behaviors would probably be improved performance. And if the person is passive aggressive, I would say improve the communication skills, because if they are passive aggressive, it means that they are not communicating. They are just doing things out of anger.
Yeah.
And so if their communication is improved, it means that we'll get a conversation started.
All right, great.
And to build confidence as well, because passive aggressiveness might be just one of the symptoms because they are not confident.
Right, fine. And that would kind of extend what the previous person spoke. I don't get the name, but you're so correct in terms of building that confidence level. Yeah, because sometimes people lack confidence. Accountability, you mentioned performance, accountability, building accountability, communication skills, behaviors that create the enabling for you to work with people. These are important behaviors to have. What about anger? Anger management is that one such behavior that we find a challenge in how people relate to each other. Anger management, because some of our employees are not very confident in themselves. Many of our employees are not able to handle conflict and anger. They might have come to work angry. Later on, we're going to look at moods. And these are behaviors that we want to coach people out of, or coach them into a new way of doing or a new way of behaving, or to help them to strengthen the good behaviors and to discontinue the poor behaviors. So what behaviors? And do these behaviors, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, would you say lack of emotional intelligence also can be?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Lack of emotional intelligence. So, I mean, one can hardly, since we're not psychologists, look at somebody and say you lack emotional intelligence. But one can see from behaviors that there are some gaps in empathy, gaps in listening. People don't listen, people don't empathize. And again, communication. And because when you work in a space where people are with different needs, and one is not open to the needs of individuals, it can point to the fact that you're not emotionally aware of something. Times you say things and it creates a negative impact on people. Like, you might, an example of emotional intelligence. I should ask you before I give my example. When you say emotion, give me one example of where that would be lacking in a person. So we can, and that's a behavior need to be fixed. Give me an example of where this is lacking, emotional intelligence. Give me an example of where you say it's lacking.
Okay, so let's say a scenario where you have a supervisor overseeing a group of persons. So they will, based on certain reaction from the teammates, as a supervisor, as a manager, you may act in a way because you think that it's offending you, but instead of looking at the bigger picture and then we'll reiterate that that thought of I am being attacked, not physically, of course, I'm being attacked, or then I'm going to respond in a similar way. Instead of de-escalating the situation, looking at it from a bigger perspective, and now using that as a teachable moment as to say, how is it that we should be acting in this kind of scenario and this kind of environment?
Yes. So instead of emotionally intelligent to the point where you're leading at a high level, instead of reacting to a negative comment and adding fuel to fire, we de-escalate in our tone and in our language. Exactly. And that's you said it so well, a teachable moment where, or a coaching opportunity where we help people out of these kinds of thoughts. And another emotional intelligent outlook could be, or ought to be, that if there are people who feel discriminated already in your group, let's say that in the environment, someone is very thin, or somebody fatter than some people, very thin or very fat, and you are making an announcement or making a decision, and in your decision making or in your announcement, you single out these people of you know, John being the fat one or this one being the skinny one. That's not being emotionally intelligent at all. Your conversation would rather be all-encompassing, such that no one feels singled out for scrutiny unless you're giving acknowledgement. So once you're singling out somebody for less than something positive, then you need to avoid that behavior, because that would say that you're not emotionally intelligent to know that somebody's going to feel offended by being singled out that way, unless you're singling them out for praise or recognition. You understand what I'm saying? Emotionally intelligent. So it works that way as well. Right. All right. So what behavior? So these are behaviors that we need to be aware of, be mindful of, insofar as they impact performance. And there are many behaviors that, in fact, there are some behaviors that are so negative and dysfunctional that impact performance, that they impact the level of output from the employee. But let me ask you a question. What's the end game then of the coaching? Is it developmental, or is it punitive? Or is there elements of, based on experience, where we try to influence behavior that the outcome ought to be punitive or developmental? What are your thoughts around that? Punitive or developmental? Or where do you draw the line between punitive and developmental? Just asking. I'm not assuming anything, I'm just asking you based on your experience. Anybody? When I say punitive, meaning you're taking action, you're punishing somebody for something, as opposed to developmental. What's the end game then when you try to make the change? Anybody? Cheryl, show them that you're bold and you can talk of Cheryl.
No, I'm not bold at all.
You're not bold. All right, so Cheryl, you need to develop your boldness.
You know?
Because, all right, so Cheryl, here's my teaching moment, Cheryl. You are going to develop your boldness, Cheryl, because when you begin that coaching conversation, someone is going to say to you, Madam, Miss Simpson, why do you say I am like that? And why do you think I want to think like you, or to do this or do that? So, you know, but go ahead, Cheryl, and tell me, what's the end game, though, of the coaching process? You know?
My end game of the coaching process, because I'm the marketing manager, so I manage the marketing department.
Mm-hmm.
How I view the marketing department is that it is synonymous with the sales department. Mm-hmm. So I don't even refer to it as marketing, I refer to it as a commercial department.
Yeah, commercial,
encompasses, sales and marketing. Mm-hmm. So my end game for coaching anybody is that I've been doing this for a long time. So I've been in marketing